Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And I hope everyone's doing well this holiday season. We're going to talk about the death of Hollywood. And unfortunately, it's going to tie in with the death of Rob Reiner. This is an article coming from the Times. So they're the ones making the connection here. We didn't talk about Rob's death on the channel. Because it's really loaded. I mean, obviously, it was horrific how he died and his wife died, but it became a weirdly political discussion. So we're like, you know what? Let's just, not cover that here right now. But we'll talk about some stuff he said before he passed about Hollywood. And a lot of what this article is saying actually meshes up with a lot of the things we've been pointing out and other people have been pointing out, that Hollywood's spending too much money, not getting a return on their investment. They're trying to play it safe while also alienating audiences. Just a lot of problems. A lot of problems that are going to come to a head.
It never made sense to me because they kept seeing a pattern for years of the fact that you alienated audiences. You wanted to play it safe with IP you owned or wanted to just reboot something that was popular. You didn't, you did a disservice to the fans and to the IP, and then it didn't work. Or you just kept throwing more money off, good money after bad, and people were kind of like, well, they owe it to us to to pay for this stuff. And it was like, no business can keep doing this and stay in business. And then the studios all decided they were going to do their own streaming services instead of just making content for streaming services. And then that's all going Highlander. And then they made the bright decision that we're just going to put things on streaming either without going to theater or like right after it's in the theater. So there's no need to go to the theater, and it's just destroying everything. And if only people had saw that, seen this coming and had said, "Hey, bad idea." If only.
Yeah, and people did see that it was.
Well,
bad
I know
idea.
we did see.
But we didn't count. People like us didn't count.
I mean, again, you could have just paid us like a few $1 million, and we would have told you bad idea, good idea, bad idea. We could have saved you, $1 billion.
It's like the easy button, right? I mean. Yeah, talk about all the money that they lost. They bring it up. They bring it up in this article. But we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about what Rob Reiner said. He actually said that Hollywood was dying long before the streaming wars, which he probably is correct about that. Think about it. We haven't had any like touchstone movies, like groundbreaking cultural event movies. Maybe Marvel, but that's very commercial thing. But we haven't had any movies that were infinitely quotable like some of Rob's movies were, including The Princess Bride, which is still relevant now. But we are starting to see a pivot kind of in that direction, I think, where Hollywood is being forced to make new stuff because the old stuff's not working anymore.
Well, a lot of the stuff they barely even promote, but it's indie or it's something interesting, has been dominating the box office.
Yeah.
And then if one thing, a case in point, one thing does really well, they ruin it. Like you had Five Nights at Freddy's or the Joker, then they have to come back with a second one.
That
and they
comes
put a
up.
bunch of money behind it because then they get the people all sticking their fingers in it who didn't want didn't want to touch it last time. And now they have to come all stick their fingers inside there. And then
their fingers in the Joker.
And then they end up just ruining everything. And then they spend way more money and it's a disaster. Like literally who the fuck thought that the second Joker movie was a great idea? I mean, especially when you saw the trailer. I took one look at that thing and I'm like, that thing's going to do shit. It was just like, who thought that was a good idea at all?
Oh, I think you could have made a great second Joker movie, just not that second Joker movie.
I agree,
right?
But I'm saying what they pick, like something does well, if something is unique, creative, or whatever does well, something more indie. And then they're like, well, we're going to make like 5 of these. And then they get everybody who didn't want to do anything with it the last time, all want to be involved. And then you get, too many cooks in the kitchen and all these demands. And then they spend too much money and it balloons up. And then it ends up being like falling like a lead fart and calling it a day.
So let's talk about that lead fart.
Sorry. Who got that from my mom and my grandma?
What?
It's a Western PA thing. I don't know.
It was because there's a lot of lead in the paint at the schools. It's like it's right up there with asbestos belch.
No. It's just, I don't know.
All right. So before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. You'll get woohoo if you do.
Woohoo.
I mean, I'm not trying to woohoo about this either. Like I said, we kind of stayed away from Rob Reiner's death. I did cover it on our other channel, just, as a short, just kind of as a purely newsy thing, but it's a loaded conversation. There's really not much you can say now that's not going to result in somebody getting pissed off. So we're going to focus on what he said about Hollywood and leave the politics at the door. But I think the politics did play into it somewhat because a lot of these bonehead decisions were politically motivated. A lot of the destruction of characters and franchises were politically motivated. A lot of the poor decisions were politically motivated. But whatever. What do we know? What do we know?
A lot, apparently.
Yeah. So this comes from the Times. R.I.P. Hollywood. Rob Reiner was right. As tycoons battle to buy Warner Brothers, insiders fear the demise of the industry, but creative filmmaking, as Reiner once said, died long ago.
It has. And he's not the only one. Like, we even had that, Dakota Johnson was talking about it after Madam Web did bad. And other actors have come out and said it's just like there's too much oversight and people can't just, make good films anymore.
So they're talking about the battle right now. And I did a video earlier today talking about Paramount, and it's still up in the air because apparently Larry Ellison's making another bid or whatever.
Yeah.
But they said either way, Warner Brothers is destined to become consolidated in an increasingly homogenized Hollywood. But to those fearing the end of the industry, I say don't worry about it because Hollywood died a long time ago. Hollywood died a long time ago. It's not because of streaming mergers or the fact that no one wants to sit in a movie theater anymore. The cancer spreading through the movie studios accelerated during COVID. And at this point, it's reached stage 4. Hollywood now lacks any originality or any actual balls to fight for a good script that costs less than $100 million to make.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. The late beloved Rob Reiner said so himself earlier this year. This is earlier this year. His Spinal Tap sequel was partly self-financed, despite the first being a cult classic. And I think they're pushing that back, actually, because of his death. In September, he told The Times that he was mourning the era when big studios would greenlight mid-budget films like his. Because, pretty much now it's like it's either a tentpole or nothing because nobody's going to the theater to see his mid-tier films until they do because they're groundbreaking films. You mentioned Weapons, Everything Everywhere at Once.
Like, even then, they aren't like theatrically like huge compared to other, blockbusters or whatever. But they still did really well on a small budget, and so they're still profiting. Like these theaters, or the studios, they might get we made $700 million in that movie, but till they take all their expenses and stuff, they might have only made $10 million in profits after it's all said and done. Where these movies might have cost $20 million, but they made $100 million in profit. They're too big.
He said it's changed dramatically. This is Rob Reiner. He said it used to be show and business. They were equal. Now the show is very small and the business is huge. Mm-hmm. You're relying on algorithms and likes. People like me who just want to tell a story. I hope there's room for us. My friend Albert Brooks. Well, Albert Brooks did a movie and it bombed just a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. My friend Albert Brooks said he only existed at a time when there was a head of a studio when you can talk to that guy as a human being. Now there's nobody like that anymore. And you always heard these stories of Francis Ford Coppola walked into the studio head's office and they sat down and had a drink and talked about the project because that person would greenlight the movie directly. Disney would Walt Disney would greenlight stuff, directly.
Right.
And
but you don't get now you have to go through committee after committee after committee. even if they side
agencies and
and even if you get to the top,
and,
they still have to go through more committees.
Yep. They say he's right. Studio heads who get paid hundreds of millions of dollars a year are more likely to be business people with bean counting backgrounds than someone who actually loves movies and nurtures creativity. But they're talking about Warner Brothers being a huge failure. They said the studio has been responsible for some of the biggest flops in Hollywood history, including the utterly senseless Joker, fully a dud.
Thank you. It was stupid. And I'm like, that was a wasted opportunity. Such a wasted opportunity. I don't even know who thought that was smart. They need to smack yourself if you're that person.
I mean, I get what they were trying. I kind of get what they're trying to do, right? I would have liked to see the story because there's no way in hell Arthur Fleck is the Joker, right? It's just he doesn't have it in him to be the Joker unless they do a movie where he actually has it in him to be the Joker. But I would have liked to have seen a movie, and again, they kind of sort of allude to it, where somebody else picks up the mantle of the Joker, but out Jokers him and becomes the Joker, the guy. But that not at the tail end of the movie, but it actually, is throughout the whole movie. That would be interesting to me, but who knows? What do I know? Again, just give us a couple $1 million and we'll say, no, don't do this.
Yeah, we can save you so much money.
We can be the studio bosses. Just come in, sit down in the office, pull up a chair and give us the pitch. And, if you're like, well, I want to do a Joker sequel where we deconstruct the first movie and we bring in Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn, but not quite. And it's going to be a musical and it's going to have a real downer of an ending. No.
Yeah. See yourself out. Bye.
See yourself out the door.
I will not validate your parking. Go.
That's the dumbest shit I've ever. Was it the Alvin and the Chipmunks movie where it's like you're not even getting a fruit basket on the way out?
Yeah.
Just get the hell out of my office. Disney blew $350 million on Snow White, which only grossed $143 million.
Oh, yeah. Don't even get me started on that one. From the beginning, audiences told you they didn't want it. They didn't want it. You right from the casting on, they didn't want it. And then everything kept going wrong with this movie. And instead of just being like, hey, you know what? Let's cut our losses. Let's just make it. We already spent this much. Let's just do one for Disney Plus or something. Do a lot cheaper. Just make it Disney Plus, or just walk away from it completely. And just said, hey, we changed our mind. Like you mentioned before in videos in the past, we can't do it justice. So we decided we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Whatever. You could have walked away from it. But no, you have to triple down. And then it ended up like being a complete cluster. Then your actress, Rachel Zegler wouldn't shut her damn mouth. And then it kept getting worse and worse and worse. And you could have saved yourself so much money. So even when you have a win, you're so far in the hole with all the losses that you're just breaking even.
Yeah, they've already, it's already been forgotten. Snow White, it's already been forgotten. 180 million on Tron Ares and only made 60 million globally. And that was another one where you're making a Tron movie without Tron. It has no direct connection to the other Tron movies.
And they kept trying to say it was going to make all this money. And they were so mad at us when we said it was going to fail. And then it did. And it was like, shocker.
It looks like a spinoff. It should, look, if you're going to do this, just do it as a Disney Plus show. And, it's a spinoff of Tron. That would have been fine.
Again, could have told you that was not going to do well. Said it wasn't going to do well. We could have saved you a lot of money. Running Man, same thing. No one cares.
Yeah, you're not going to, I know this is closer to the book, but you're not going to top Arnold Schwarzenegger. Running Man is,
Basically, what do we own that we could just rehash? Because we're lazy and we want to bet on a sure thing. And it's but a lot of these things aren't sure things anymore because people are they're going to wait and see. Because if you're going to ruin it like you've ruined everything else. Well,
now this is what's interesting, right? So the same studios are routinely passing on quirky films that delight audiences but cost a lot less. Everything Everywhere All at Once was rejected by all the studios for being too weird, too risky, and too confusing. A24 picked it up, and it was produced for at most $25 million. It did $143 million worldwide and won several Oscars, including Best Picture.
Yeah, and it was one of you guys' favorite movies.
We went to go see it. Squid King and I went to go see it. I think it was opening weekend, and we didn't know much about it. He knew more about it than I did. I'm just like, this movie looks really crazy weird. And we had to go out of our way to see it because it wasn't in a lot of the theaters. It was in one theater.
Yeah, you had to go a ways out to go find it. Yeah.
And I think there were only a couple other people in the theater. And this was, again, opening weekend. But this is one where the word of mouth really made this thing blow up. And because I didn't know anything about it, I walked in that movie and I was like, okay, this is really weird. And I walked out of it and I thought about that movie for 2 weeks. Afterwards.
Well, I would say Weapons is another example.
Yeah,
that is like this. Heck, even Freakier Friday, they did that one on a lower budget, and they just kind of threw it out there, but it still made money, which is better than a lot of Disney films have done. It actually profited.
Well, look at Disney back in the 80s and 90s, and they had their animated movies, but most of their live action stuff was pretty low budget. They almost got destroyed over The Black Hole. I remember they tried to compete with Star Wars.
But that's another one I would have looked at that and said, don't make this movie.
Don't make this movie. It's boring.
I don't know, maybe
it's so boring.
I want to pull my hair out when I see this because I'm like, this clearly was a bad idea. Why are you going all in on this stuff? I see these things, these choices, and I was like, why would you throw money like that away? If you're just going to burn money, just give me the money or give it to all these other people. You could have fed the homeless with the money that you're burning on stupid decisions.
So here was Talk to Me. I haven't seen this one, but this is another A24. But it was made for $4.5 million. It said cost less than a studio head's annual lunch bill. It made $92 million.
And the annual lunch bill is more than $4.5 million?
It depends on how many people you're taking out to lunch or what you're eating for lunch, I guess. It said there are a few exceptions. Warner Brothers made Sinners for a modest $88 million, went on to gross almost $368 million.
Oh yeah, people keep raving about it. They got a bunch of nominations for awards.
They also released Weapons, which brought in $269 million against a $38 million budget. Yeah, and Paramount, every movie Paramount released this year lost money, and only one made a profit. That was Regretting You. And this weekend, they're not doing great at the box office. Like, yeah, Avatar 3 did $88 million, but they expected $100 million domestic.
100, more than that, like 110 to 125.
SpongeBob, the SpongeBob movie, talking about Paramount, SpongeBob only made $16 million. They were expecting at least like 20, 25.
Oh, really? See, I'm not surprised by that at all.
But they had all kinds of marketing, like Burger King's got the meals.
I'm not surprised by it. I don't think people are going to go to see SpongeBob. SpongeBob's something you watch on TV. It's not like for a movie.
We got SpongeBob at home.
Basically. And then as far as Avatar is concerned, I'm not surprised about that either. I mean, compared to other movies, $88 million when Tron Ares made that, $60 million for the whole run is a good thing. And it did 345 or something like that million globally. But domestically, the Avatar films do not do that well. Disney knows that, which is why they were making the desperate attempt of putting in a new trailer from Marvel for a movie that's not coming out for a week, to try to get people to go to see the movie. But they're not going to go because it's going to leak on the internet anyway. You don't have to, why spend the money? And it was really dumb, but it was never going to do well here. And it's going to probably do okay, but it's not going to do as well as Way of Water did. There's no way.
No. I'm looking at this and it's like, yeah, it just hit me. All these huge players in Hollywood died this year. Robert Redford died. Mm-hmm. Dan Keaton died. Gene Hackman, David Lynch, Rob Reiner. I mean, we're losing that generation of Hollywood. The old Hollywood that knew how to tell a story, that knew how to push the envelope. We're losing them. And so what we're getting are just the bean counters saying, go to this movie. And it's going to get better and worse, I think, with AI, because AI will let talented filmmakers be able to make movies cheaper. But it's also going to get worse because bean counter is going to be like, oh, I could just sit here and use Chat GPT to make a movie in my office, and I can save all that money.
Yeah, give myself a bonus. It's like I would love to see more of the independence, that like more weapons, more everything everywhere all at once. Those kind of films get the money. I mean, even Friday Nights at Freddy's, the first one was done really cheap too, and it did really well. Now the second one, again, it's the same issue as like the Joker movie, where they all wanted to stick their fingers in it, and then it came out to be shit. But it's just like I would love to see more opportunity. And the thing about the 80s, and they're all banking on the 80s stuff, right? The 70s to the 80s stuff. They keep banking on it, 90s even. And, we're going to do more of this because we own it. It was popular. You do understand when it first came out, a lot of them were indie ideas. They were just ideas that they didn't have a huge budget. They didn't know if it was going to work. It worked great. I mean, go see Star Wars, for example. Everything worked great. And then
Spielberg, everything he did was.
Yeah, it ended up being groundbreaking, phenomenal, because it was more on the storyteller, and you gave them a budget. It was their ability to tell a good story. And that gave us the classics you want to bank on today. But the thing is, they're stale, they're old. You destroyed what was left of a lot of them. They're buried, they're dead. Just get these people that are creative, work with them and do new things. Let this generation have their own, exciting things that maybe 20 years from now, everybody's going to, repurpose and, reanimate the corpse for, that stuff. Because that's what it is. I mean, but there's a lot of people out there who have really great ideas, and you see creative people all the time on YouTube or different places, like with ideas that could probably pull off a movie. Let them have a chance.
So this is really damning, because it said we can point the finger at any number of causes for the flattening of our culture and the rise of homogenized faces on social media, the lack of intellectual curiosity, fear of offending anyone, corporate greed. But the fault firmly lies with studio executives who only care about their pay packages or the stock shares and the board members who back them. Now, this is Bob Gale, who wrote Back to the Future. And I do remember him saying this. He said that they couldn't make the movie today. He said Bob Gale, who wrote Back to the Future, told The Guardian just last week there was no way this movie would get made today, and not just because of the cost or the complexity of theoretical physics. He said we'd go into the studio and they'd say, what's the deal with this relationship between Marty and Doc? They'd start interpreting pedophilia or something. There'd be a lot of things they just have problems with.
Yeah, but that's okay. They would only do that now because they've had how many years that they had to insert every flippin' agenda and rainbow flag in there. Yeah. That's what this is about. If you're going to interpret that, even though there was no indication of that, it's because you've spent years adding that stuff to franchises you had, adding this, grooming shit and that in there. And then because of it, now they got burned. And so they're worried. It's like that one lady that was talking about how she had a pitch for an animated show, and it looked pretty good. But they wouldn't even look at her pitch really because they failed with High Guardian Spice and other things that they had. We were going to go after those people, and then it did terrible. So because she wasn't a white person, they just automatically decided that we're not gonna even go there because of the backlash. It's probably not going to do well. And it was unfair. It was a good idea. It was just they bet on the wrong things. But this is their own fault.
That was the double-edged sword of DEI. They were in such a hurry to greenlight stuff made by diverse people that they greenlit the first shit that came along, and they gave a bunch of money to the wrong people. And then when they dropped the ball, they weren't willing to take a chance.
Right, and then you have other people that are coming up who aren't white, straight, or male. It was a female. I think she was black, wasn't she?
Yeah.
And they have really great ideas. And they get passed over because, we tried it already and it didn't work. No, you tried it with the wrong people and it didn't work.
We had one black female showrunner and it didn't work out. So
we tried this. Sorry, that's where it's unfortunate because these people are dumb.
My pay package,
I know, and the thing is, they said a lot of the things that you can't get made today, and they're not wrong. I would say even shows and films from just a few years ago, before 2014.
Community would never get made
is a prime example. They would never make that today.
No.
And it's a fantastic show, but they never make it today. And unfortunately, that's not untrue because it's all too problematic now.
This is film journalist Stephen Gatos. He told the outlet in July that whether the intellectual property of a project is fresh, reworked, or recycled, they all conform to the same formula. The big change in the indie and mid-market sectors is that truly original, provocative, mainstream drama, which deals in recognizable human dilemmas, no longer has a place in cinemas, in the theater, because there's nothing called film culture left in Hollywood. There is no film culture. It's all business now, just strictly business. There's no creativity.
Yeah, they said, I used to say that Hollywood was filled with sheeple. Yeah, no shit. It's like, we could have told you all this. Why are you failing? It's your own fault because you put bean counters in charge instead of creatives.
Yeah. And this is what happens. And it's like, look, you need to find the balance because the flip side is, there are a lot of people that think that everything they make is fantastic and it should be seen and they should get millions of dollars, to do it. But then the flip side of this is if it's strictly business and there's no creativity whatsoever, then, why should people go to your movie? Like,
I like this last paragraph. I used to jokingly say that Hollywood is filled with sheeple. If one or two courageous types at the top said something strongly enough with enough conviction, others would follow like sheep. But now it's just the land of the creatively bankrupt lemmings. Studio heads seem happy to join hands and jump off a cliff, taking the entire business with them. Yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
They've been. Why isn't the position that they are now? It's because of these people just like they stopped making things and just started repurposing everything and then repurposing it poorly for an audience that for themselves and their friends, but that audience isn't the audience that if you wanted that, you should have made something new.
Yeah, when everyone's Iger, no one is right.
It's just across the board. It's like make new things, and then you're like, well, you make new things, and no one comes to them. Like Elio, make good new things. I mean, Elio wasn't a bad movie, but it was not one that I would have gone theatrical. It would definitely just put it on Disney Plus. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't one that was going to bring a lot of people to the box office. What's
wild is the David and Goliath Angel Studios movie made more than Elio did opening weekend.
I believe it because it's something different. You might not agree with but you don't like the Bible and Christian element, but they have as a big enough audience. There's a lot of Christian people out there.
Everybody knows the story, even if they're not Christian. Everybody knows the story of David.
And you don't have to have a blockbuster. You just have to have a really good movie that's made for an audience that isn't niche to death. And it's, and then even if it's really good, a lot of people that aren't even that core audience might come to see it just because they heard good things about it. I think that's what happened with some of these weirder movies, like Everything Everywhere All at Once. Word of mouth was like, oh my gosh, you got to see this. I might not have been your original intended audience, but people might go see it because you have to see this, and that's what it is. And then it doesn't help, like with Joker, that kind of happened, but the media kept trying to shut it down because they were mad it didn't have the right talking points. And I want to say right now, the media is one of your biggest enemies too, Hollywood.
Yeah.
The media is out there, and every time you do stuff, if it's not what they want to hear, they do everything they can. They were mad about Twisters because it didn't have enough global warming messaging.
Oh, my God.
I'm just saying, the media is not your friend.
Oh, hey, speaking of which, because we're not talking about the media, but talking about Back to the Future, I just remembered. I am pretty sure they answered why Marty was hanging out with Doc Brown in one of the earlier scripts, and they cut it because it turned out that he was selling drugs.
Oh, really?
Marty was selling pot to the kids at school for Doc Brown. Yeah, that's I'm pretty sure that's what it was, but that's why they cut that out. But yeah, it never really made a lot of sense. Like, why is he hanging out with this old man?
Well, it could just be like there's all kinds of weird friendships that people make all the time. That's nothing more than just being friends.
Maybe like I always thought when I was a kid, I always thought it was Doc was helping him with his music and the amp and the whole he was like a science nerd or something. And
here's my thing. Okay, Up. Yeah, of course, Russell got stuck in the house when the balloons lifted off or whatever. But otherwise, after they came back, why is Russell still hanging out with Carl? Because they made an unlikely friendship through a situation. Maybe they volunteered together. Maybe, he came in and worked, do stuff at the school for a club and you were in the club. There's lots of reasons you can be friends with somebody who's different than you that doesn't make sense. It has nothing to do with pedophilia or agenda. I'm
Welcome
just saying.
to 2025. We never questioned it back then.
No, because
some people would be like, how'd they meet? Whatever, doesn't matter.
The reason they're questioning it now is because of shipping culture and because all the decisions have been made over the last 10 years in films that have been an obvious, push for certain things. And now the backlash was swift and severe, which was going to happen no matter what. And now you're like questioning everything to the place you won't even take chances on stuff because people might get the wrong idea. So what? If it's a good thing, then take the chance on it.
Yep. There we go. We're going to wrap it up.
Yours are flush to the money anyway.
Yeah, you're going to burn it anyway. Might as well take that $150 million you're going to lose on that big tentpole franchise. Take that and greenlight like 5 smaller movies. And
I'm sure
one of those
much
might
better.
hit. Yeah, one of those might hit. You're actually going to increase your odds of putting everything into one basket. You're betting everything on black or whatever.
And if you pick right, they all might hit.
They might all hit, but you've got more chances. And I think they're going to have to start thinking that way, but we'll see.
If they're around.
If they're around. We're going to wrap it up.
Yep.
Please subscribe. We'll talk later.
Bye.